Teacher Max here again, and welcome to today's video where we will be testing your listening skills and your ability to comprehend a story and to answer the questions correctly. If you have watched the previous videos of the storytelling, we are speaking about a certain story called a fable. Now, fables are passed from family to family. Sometimes they can change. And of course, there are many different folk tales. So I am obviously excited to get started, and I will be showing you some photos or some pictures to try alleviate, to take away the boredom. I hope this is not boring because I love telling you stories. Our story today is about the frog and the squirrel. Many years ago, in a forest unknown to man, away from prying eyes, there lived a large amount of animals roaming endlessly and aimlessly, untouched and unbothered by man through the green landscapes and the green world which they lived in. However, despite there being many animals in this untouched, unknown, and undiscovered part of the forest, many animals did not really get along with the frog. They were all friends in general, and they greeted each other, and they avoided some predators, but the frog found himself quite lonely. And one day, as he was hopping around looking for some food, he was not on his side of the river. So he would swim all the way across a large river which was snaking through the forest, and he would gather supplies and provisions in his mouth and take it back to his home on the other side. But one day he bumped into a friendly little squirrel. Now, as the squirrel was gathering some nuts and also some food, some provisions, he saw the frog looking curiously at him. He greeted the frog, and they soon started chatting, and they became acquainted, and actually, to an extent, they became friends. The sun set, and before he knew it, it was dark, and the squirrel, instead of saying goodbye to the frog, invited him in for dinner. They exchanged some food, so he was giving him some nuts, the frog had some insects, and they ate a lovely meal together and said their farewells. The next day, the same happened. The frog happened to bump into the squirrel, and again, and so on. For this happened for a couple of days, where the squirrel would gather so many of his provisions, of his nuts and food he found on the forest floor, and the frog would also find some insects, and they would swap, they would exchange the food. Now, after having a delicious meal, the frog patted his belly. That was divine! But my friend Squirrel, I think it's time you come and visited me. Squirrel abandoned all notion of pretending to like this idea. So he was not happy, not pleased with the idea, because Squirrel was not like the frog. He couldn't swim, and he made his unhappiness known to the frog. But the frog guaranteed him that the best insects were actually on the other side of the river, and he was just wandering across the river because he was bored and lonely, and he wanted to share a meal with his new friend. Hesitantly, so not very happy about the idea, but the squirrel finally caved in to the frog's suggestion, and he agreed. But the frog assured him that he would carry him on his back all the way across this magnificent roaring river. Some days the river was placid, it was peaceful, but other days when there was wind, there were a little bit of waves as the river moved and snaked along this beautiful, untouched landscape. So the frog told the squirrel to hop on, and he took a piece of vine, which are leaves from a tree that are hanging, and he tied the little squirrel around on his back. So he took the rope and the squirrel was on his back and he's happy, he's secure, he cannot fall off. Rabbit, rabbit, the frog said. Are you ready, squirrel, my friend? The squirrel gulped. They had met under the strangest of circumstances, living in the same parts of the forest, sharing food. But the squirrel was still worried about the water. He didn't really like to swim. Yes, said the squirrel, let's be off. As the frog was swimming and swimming and swimming, very bad thoughts popped into his mind. He started to think about all the squirrel's delicious provisions, all the berries and the nuts the squirrel had collected, and he realized finding food is quite difficult. And although he had his own stack of food, he had his own provisions and his food stored, if something happened to Squirrel, only he would know where the squirrel lived and where all the food was stored. So the frog did a terrible thing. He decided that he was going to plunge, jump under, and dive into the water and harm and kill his squirrel friend. Now, just as this happened, the squirrel realized, oh no, why is he diving? Why is the frog diving? And he started to kick and thrash and he's kicking the water. Help, 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 the squirrel cried, knowing that his life was in danger. Now the frog was very greedy. He did not think twice about this. He didn't feel ashamed or feel bad, and he just dove under the water, but he struggled to get under because the squirrel was trying to stay afloat. Just at that moment, high in the air, a ravenous, a very, very hungry eagle was flying, looking for something to eat. And he saw the commotion, the water splashing, the yelling of the animals, and he realized this was a delicious treat. So what did he do? He dived down very swiftly, very silently, and he grabbed the squirrel and lifted him into the air. But the frog suddenly realized his dire mistake. Because of his greed, he had not only put the squirrel's life in jeopardy, he didn't only risk the squirrel's life, he had also risked his own because of his greed. Now the eagle carried them both off high into the sky, obviously to take him to his own nest where they would be eaten. Flying into the sunset, our frog friend learned a very valuable lesson. I hope you can guess what that is. Yes, for those of you that guessed correctly, the moral of the story, or the lesson our frog had learned, that we should not take things that don't belong to us, because greed is a very powerful thing and it can be our downfall. So it is not good to be greedy. What a wonderful story! I hope you enjoyed it. Now we're going to answer some of our questions from our questionnaire. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okie dokie, here we go. I hope you can see this. The squirrel and the frog. Question number 1. How did the frog and the squirrel become friends? Number 2. What idea did the frog have? And did the squirrel like this idea? Number 3. What bad thoughts did the frog have? on the river and why? Instead of diving under the water and harming his friend, the squirrel, what happened to both the squirrel and the frog? How did this happen? What is the moral of our story? Please take a few minutes, press pause on my video, answer the questions verbally aloud, or you can write them down and compare them to my answers. Kindly press pause, and when you're ready, you can press play. 3, 2, 1. Ding, ding, ding. If you have pressed play, welcome back. Let's look at our answers. Number 1. How did they become friends, the frog and the squirrel? Yes, the frog and the squirrel both lived in the same part of the forest and often exchanged provisions, so they exchanged some food. Please always answer in a full sentence. Don't just say, they both lived in the same part of the forest. Who lived? The gorilla, the lion? No, the frog and the squirrel both lived in the same part. Number 2. What idea did the frog have? And did the squirrel like this idea? Oh no! The frog invited the squirrel to his home for dinner on the other side of the river. The squirrel did not like this idea because he couldn't swim. Not now he can't swim. Past tense, he couldn't swim. The story is finished. Number 3. What bad thoughts did the frog have in the river and why? The frog became greedy and thought if he dived under the water and killed his friend, then he could have food for a very long time and he wouldn't have to share. But number 4, instead of diving under the water and harming his friend, what happened? An eagle was flying high above and saw the squirrel and the frog and dove down, catching them both and carrying them away to be eaten. The moral of our story. Last one. It's not good to be greedy. The frog learned the lesson that we should not take things that don't belong to us, and greed can be our downfall. Yes, it can. I agree 100%. Thank you so much for joining us and watching this video. Please remember, there are so many more videos to watch. Stay tuned, and I hope to see you soon to help you improve your English writing, listening, speaking abilities. Bye. Thank you.